There it goes. It's recording now. Okay. And just to go a little bit back there, what we've done is we look at, from chapter 6, we saw the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, although the 7th trumpet still has to play out. And we'll see probably that playing out in chapter 14. And then last week we spoke about chapter 12, here right in the middle of the tribulation period. And I think we spent 2 weeks on that, 2 weeks on chapter 12, about the woman who gives birth to man-child, and then the dragon with his description of 7 heads and 10 horns. He wants to devour the child. The child is then caught up in heaven. Before he can do that, there's war in heaven between him and Michael and his angels, and between him and then the dragon and his angels, and they fight, and the dragon is cast. Obviously Michael wins the battle, and then the dragon is cast out from, and as we spoke about this, the second heaven, not the first heaven, and the saints ultimate victory. And also on earth the woman flees into the wilderness, that's Israel, and God will protect her, give her wings, and also take her to a prepared place that he has for her. And then the dragon will go after Israel to pursue the woman, and to obviously wants to destroy Israel, because Israel is the plan specifically for the 7 year, this last week, 7 years period. As if you can remember, you can quickly go back. If you remember the 69 weeks, there was 1 week left. That's the 7 year, and that's where Revelation 6 to 19 fits in. Good. So tonight we're going to continue. We're going into Revelation 13, and this is, you can say it's in the middle of the week, or the start of the middle of the week, in Revelation 13. And we're going to look at the first beast that comes out of the sea. We spoke about Revelation 11, where there was a beast coming from the bottomless pit, or will come from bottomless pit. And obviously I'm going to show you also that it's not this beast. It's not the same beast, although there's a lot of similarities as well. But this beast coming from the sea is the world ruler, or as we know it as the Antichrist. And we'll look into that. I just want to give a summary, basically, and I put it on the screen for you guys. Just a summary of the titles that is given to this world ruler in Daniel, in Thessalonians, in 1 John, Revelation. In Daniel, we spoke about him. It's the little horn. And then we also spoke in Daniel 9 about the prince that is to come, or the coming prince. And then Daniel 11, the willful king, the man of lawlessness. 2 Thessalonians, the son of destruction, is also called the Antichrist in 1 John. And also, Jesus also mentioned many false Christs, where the Antichrist will probably be the ultimate one, the ultimate false Christ. And then the rider on the white horse, Revelation 6 verse 2, we said this is not Jesus, it's referring to the Antichrist. And then the beast out of the sea, that refers to the Antichrist. Let me just get into my notes so we can continue there. Okay, so I'm going to start again. I don't know if this is really a big issue. It's just a matter of where you put the last verse from chapter 12, where we spoke about the person standing on the sand of the sea, and the different translations. Some put it in Revelation 13 verse 1, some put it in Afrikaans version. It was another verse 18 was added there, that says, and let me just bring that up if you can remember that. There it is. I just put it there on the top. It says, and he stood on the sand of the sea. Now if you put it in chapter 12, it is the dragon standing on the sand of the sea, and then the beast comes from the waters, from the sea. But if you put it in chapter 13, as I said, also the Greek doesn't say and he, the Greek says and I. And I kind of lean towards that understanding, that it was John who stood on the sand of the sea and he saw this beast rising out of the sea. So that's my understanding of that. And also, John was on the island of Patmos. He was probably walking on the beach, and then he had this vision. He was standing on the sea and he saw this vision from the sea. That's the kind of idea that I get when I read this. Now let's read verse 1. And we're going to take it verse by verse and just try to explain everything that is from this chapter. So Revelation 13 verse 1 says, and I saw a beast rising out. So that's why I connected. He stood on the stand of the sea and he saw a beast. That's how I connected. And I, John, saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems, that's crowns, on its horns, and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's. Its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and his great authority. So let's just start there. It's a very, very similar description of the beast or the animals that is described in Daniel chapter 7. Now, I don't know if you can remember, we did a whole study on this. Who's the Antichrist? Where does he come from? So we studied Daniel 7 and 8, 9, and chapter 11. We went through all of that, so I'll refer you back to all of those details. I'm not going to go through them again, but let me take you I'll just remind you of a few of those verses. I've got it on the screen, chapter 7, verse 7. Let's read verse 7 and we'll look at verse 8 also. Verse 7 says, after this, I saw the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast. Now remember, he described these 3 beasts. I don't know if you can think back that far. That was a long time ago. We spoke about this. The 4 beasts, and the 3 beasts, and then suddenly there's a fourth beast. Now this fourth beast is what we interpret as the Antichrist, or the prince, that Daniel calls him the prince. Now after this, I saw in the night visions. My internet connection shows unstable. Hopefully, just let me know on WhatsApp if my internet goes down. So after this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. And it was different from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So here again, we see the fourth beast who has iron legs, who has 10 horns. Again, we saw that in chapter 11, we saw that in chapter 13. And now if you continue reading, if you read before that, you will also read about the leopard, you'll read about the bear, you'll read about the lion. So I hope you can all remember that. But let me just quickly, so we have this beast with iron legs, feet with 10 toes, okay, described in Daniel. And then we came to that conclusion now. Toes. Okay, we came to that conclusion that it's representing the 10 toes of the image of Nebuchadnezzar. He had this dream of this image, and the image, the 10 toes, or the legs and the feet and toes, represent the Roman Empire at that stage. And also note that this beast that we just saw in Revelation 13, also Revelation 11, also has 10 horns. And that's important. There is a connection there. Now, if you go to Daniel 7 verse 8, it says, I considered the horns. So it's now looking at the toes or the horns, the 10 horns. And behold, there came up among those 10 horns there came up among them another horn, and he called it a little horn, before which three, that's the first three animals, the first three beasts, of the first horns were plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man and a mouth speaking great things. So that's just another description of this prince, this king that will come, or this ruler that will come in the place of the other three beasts. He's the fourth beast, and he has, there were 10 horns, and just a description of this little horn coming from those horn, 3 that is broken off, and remember we've got 7 as well. We'll talk about that when we get to Revelation chapter 17. I'll refer back to that. Now, among the 10 horns, we see here in Daniel 1 little horn. This little horn displaces 3 other horns. That's why he's the fourth beast. Okay, so there are 4 animals, 3 animals, and they basically Babylon, and if you can remember, Medes and Persians and the Greek empires through history. And then this 10 horns basically represents Rome, and 3 were broken off. Those 3, the previous 3, Babylon, Medes and Persians, and the Greek. And then from this, the fourth, let's say the fourth ruler of Rome, the Roman Empire, hopefully that makes sense. He comes into play, and obviously he replaces the other 3 before him. So I'm just getting, I'm hot. I'm going to take off this. Okay. So we see in verse 1, let's go back to Revelation 13:1. We see that the beast rises out of the sea. Now the question, let's start with that. What does it mean, this beast rising out of the sea? Now, I looked at a few different interpretations. Let me just quickly put that back up there so you can see. Okay, so basically the question is, what does it mean when this beast rises out of the sea? And well, one of the references I always look is John Walford, because I agree 90% with his view. And some believe, he also says, some believe that the sea refers to the Gentile nations, which is not wrong, but then he concludes from that this beast coming from the nations, the Gentile nations, is a Gentile ruler, which I disagree with. And you know why? Because when we studied who the Antichrist is, I showed you from Daniel that I believe the Antichrist will be a Jew, and I will tell you why. Well, get into that now. I'll give you the detail also about that. And then others believe, obviously, that the sea is the location of the Mediterranean Sea. So they believe the Antichrist will come from that area kind of way. That's what, so John Walford kind of says it's both. He kind of accepts both as a probability. Now, I don't agree with that, although the sea does represent the nations, okay? Then John MacArthur, I went to look at him. He says that the sea refers to the abyss, to the bottomless pit from which the beast come from. And he refers, his basis for his argument is Revelation 11 verse 7, that talks about the beast that will come from the bottomless pit, and that he will kill the 2 witnesses. So he bases his argument on that. Obviously, I don't believe that, because I do believe the beast of Revelation 13 is not the same beast as Revelation 11, and I'll show you that now. So now let me go into this a little bit. I don't know if there's any comments so far, but I've got some information to show you why I believe that it's not the bottomless pit. So let me hear. Can't quite remember, says Alan. Does the Roman Empire resurrect in the tribulation? I'm going to get to that. We will get to that specific point, so I'm not going to give that answer now. I would like to hear who believes that and who's got a different idea on that. Okay, so we'll get to that. Let me just ask any questions, any comments, any response, anything that you have read something differently and you have a different idea. That was the dog. Okay. Okay.
Hello, Rudy.
Yes, you can continue. Urs, say that's Urs. Yes, Urs.
Well, I just heard from somebody else, from a Jew, a Messianic Jew,
Yeah.
who says that it is not a Jew.
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist is not a Jew.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Okay, that's his opinion. He's got a right to that opinion. Okay. No other questions. I'm going to continue. I'll just put the scripture back up there so you can all see that. Okay, so now obviously I don't agree that the sea is referring to the Mediterranean place, the sea that Mediterranean seas. I also don't believe it's the abyss or the bottomless pit specifically. But let me say, from our study in Daniel, we saw in chapter 11, I don't know if you can remember this, but in chapter 11 of Daniel, we specifically, verse 36, and I'll put it on the screen now, that there were two kings, the king of the north, that is Syria, and the king of the south, that is Egypt. And if you can remember, there were war between these two kingdoms, and you can read that, Daniel chapter 11, verse 5 to 31, the war between the two kingdoms. And at the end, with the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes in 164 BC, that's the history. Now, verses 32 to 35 then covers the whole period from 164 before Christ down to the end of time, the time of the Gentiles. It just continues all the way to there. And then verse 36 tells us about this willful king that appears. So we had the great kings of the past. We had not the great kings, they were bad, evil kings. We had Nebuchadnezzar, we had the Medes and the Persians. I can't remember the kings. Suddenly I can't remember. But the Greek king was, if you can remember, Alexander the Great. But I don't think he was so great. He was a very bad king, and he drank himself dead. He was 31 or 32 years when he died. Yeah, he drank himself to death. So anyways, not a good king. And then we had the Romans, very bad, very bad. So, and from the four animals, the fourth one obviously represents this willful king that will appear, and it refers to the last king until before Jesus comes. And the image that we saw in Daniel 2 is destroyed. So hopefully I'm just trying to color in the picture again so that we all can remember that. Now the king of the north, that is Syria, also corresponds with Daniel 7, the little horn. So the king of the north, he overcame the south, the king of the south, and that little horn corresponds with him. And this king also corresponds with Daniel 9:26. That's the prince that is to come. And this little horn, Daniel 7, verse 8 that we spoke of, who at the beginning of the Great Tribulation will then take role of world ruler. Now, he will be, and this is what I believe. I hear some people say it's a Gentile king. I don't think so. I think it will be a Jew. And the reason why is because the Antichrist is kind of in a substitute sense for Jesus Christ. And the Jews will not accept a non-Jew as their Messiah. He comes as a Messiah, and the world will be deceived. Directly, specifically, Israel will believe that he is the Messiah, the waiting one, and they will be deceived. And then obviously they will not accept a Gentile ruler as the Messiah. So that's the reason. That's the first reason. And the Antichrist will also, as I said, come in the place. That's Antichrist, meaning against Christ, but also in the place of Christ as a substitute. He's the false Christ, and Jesus warned them about false messiahs, and obviously referring to him as well. And that is why I do believe he's a Jew, and he will come from Syria. In that sense, I do believe he's an Assyrian Jew. So I don't really watch the news, but there's lots of things going on today in Syria, but peace talks and stuff like that. So it's also interesting to watch that. But anyways, so whoever he is now, if you don't believe that, that's fine. I love you. It doesn't matter. But the sea, I don't think the sea represents or refers to a bottomless pit, because the beast of Revelation 13 is not the same as the one from Revelation 11:7. Revelation 11 verse 7, it is Satan himself, okay? He is the beast from Revelation 11:7. And then Revelation 13 verse 1, it's the Antichrist, and not the dragon who gives this beast from the sea, who gives him power, who gives him a throne, and who gives him this great authority and everything. So it cannot be the same. And also the bottomless pit, I don't think the Antichrist is a demon or angel, fallen angel that comes from the bottomless pit. I do believe the Antichrist is a person. He's a political figure person, and obviously he will be possessed, and I do believe he will be possessed by Satan himself. Okay, so what does it mean when the beast rises out of the sea? Revelation, let me give you some scripture to back up what I'm trying to say. Let's go to Revelation 17. I'm going to jump a little bit just to give some, there's 36. Sorry, I didn't read that. And the king, let me read that. The king shall do as he wills. This is the fourth king, the fourth beast, the last ruler before Jesus, the kingdom of Christ is set on earth. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished, for what is decreed shall be done. So let me just back up a little bit just to show you again the picture. Just to show you this again. Okay, so what we're saying, there's the kingdoms. This is the fourth kingdom, but the 10 toes are there. From the 10 toes comes one. But this is a bit out of proportion, this picture, because the 10 toes actually starts, if you can see my mouse, it should be somewhere during the Roman Empire existed since before the crucifixion. So as I say, my picture is a bit completely out of proportion. But the fact is the 10 toes will kind of, and that's where I'm not going to give you a clue now. I almost gave it away. But from there, we will see this one little horn. He will be the prince, and he will call himself God. He will stand in the temple. So you can all kind of fit now and make that connect those dots with everything happening here in Revelation 13, also Matthew 24:15, the desolation of the abomination of desolation, standing in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the man of lawlessness. All those things, it all corresponds if you understand it. If you don't understand it, then it's very confusing. Okay, so hopefully I just want to give you that bigger picture again. Now, if you go to Revelation 17, verse 1. Revelation 17, verse 1. Okay, Revelation 17, verse 1. This is the reason why I don't think that the sea represents is the bottomless pit, but rather the nations, as some interpret also. Verse 17, verse 1 says, Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters. So here we have a kind of a similar idea. But then verse 15 explains what is this many waters? The angel said to me, The waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and language. So the Revelation gives us the explanation of the many waters. It tells us what it is. As I say always, you read it as it is. If it's not explained in the context or the immediate context what it is, you accept it literally. Obviously, Revelation tells us, and the Bible tells us, and we'll go back to Isaiah just to show you more scripture, what these many waters is. So the prostitute here is not sitting literally on water. He's seated on the peoples and multitude and nations and languages. Now we'll get to verse chapter 17 and we'll talk about the prostitute, and we'll kind of ask around, maybe go and see if you can get some comments and some commentaries about who the prostitute. I've got my idea. I think I know who the prostitute is, but we'll get there. So here in chapter 17, the multitudes of people, the nations, the many waters. But we have the same idea from the prophets in the Old Testament. If you go to Isaiah chapter 17, Isaiah chapter 17, you will read the following. Okay, nou het ek nou iets geskip. Where's my Isaiah? I don't have it on here. Sorry, people. So you'll have to go back. I don't have it on the screen. Sorry, I forgot to put it on there. Isaiah chapter 17. I'll just put it on the white screen. Don't worry. I'll put it for everyone on the white screen. Just stop that one. Let's put it on the white screen there. Okay, there you go. Isaiah chapter 17 verse 12. Okay, it says, the thunder of many peoples, they thunder like the thundering of the sea. The roar of nations, they roar like the roaring of mighty waters. So here the prophet explains actually the evil of people are like thunder of the sea and the roaring of mighty waters. Just an explanation of what people is. And then Isaiah 57, but the wicked are like the tossing sea, for it cannot be quiet. Now, this is a very good picture of a non-believer in general, of the world in general, of nations in general. I mean, we cannot have just one day of peace in this world and someone will come and mess it up. They like the tossing sea. They just cannot be quiet. It's like my mom always said, vredevreesend. Now, how do you say that in English? You hate peace. It's like the world don't want peace, but they want it, but they don't like it. Peace. Anyways, and its waters toss up mire and dirt. So just a very good explanation about the nations. Isaiah 60 verse 5, then you shall see and be radiant, your heart shall thrill and exult, because the abundance of the sea shall be turned to you, the wealth of the nations shall come to you. This is a promise to Israel, where the abundance of the nations, the sea, will be turned to them. The wealth of the nations will come to them. There in that one sentence, it's explained what the sea is. It's the nations, the abundance of the nations, the abundance of the sea, the wealth of the nations. So there you have it. These are some scriptures in the Bible that have the same idea about what the sea is. Okay, Lisa Marie said Alexander the Great died of malaria poisoning. Okay, I read something different, so I'll have to go and look that up. I read that he drank himself to death. That's what I read. So that's what I learned actually in Greek when I studied Greek. So I'll have to go and check that up. So maybe you're right. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my professor was wrong. I don't know. I'll go and check that up. Okay, maybe someone can Wikipedia check if ek reg was. Yeah, but he was an alcoholist, basically. Alcoholist. Okay, so let's quickly go back to the point I was making. That's why I believe that the sea refers to nations in general, and that this political or world ruler comes from the nations. And also I believe he will be a Jew. he's a Jew or not, but I don't think the Jews will, or Israel, or the Jews I'm not saying that there were those who will flee to the mountains, I'm not talking about them, but the Jews in general in the world will not accept the Messiah if he is a non-Jew, okay? And he comes to deceive them first and then the world. Now, here is also some facts about the first beast out of the sea. These are some facts that I have. And the first one, you can write it down if you want. I don't have the points on the screen. The first one, he's a man. The beast is a man, okay? Some people have a different interpretation of that. I believe he's a man. Now let me show you quickly, and I've got that on the screen. Revelation 13 verse 18 says, this calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. And his number is 666. Okay? That's why I believe he's a man. That's point number one. The second point is he will rise out of the nations, the sea. Okay? Out of humanity. Let's say out of humanity. Wat stuur jy vir my, Megan? Interesting stuff? Related to the Bible study? Okay, I'm not going to watch now. Okay, so, okay, he will be, that's 2. He will rise out of the sea of the nations, humanity. Number 3, he will be a ruler of the 7 kingdoms symbolized by the 7 heads. Okay? So he's the 4th beast, the 4th ruler who will rule over those 7 heads. Then, number 4, he will be king also over the 10 kingdoms that is yet to be formed. Okay, we'll get that in chapter 17. Number 5, he's a blasphemer. Verse 1, verse 5, verse 17, verse 3. What say that?
Either malaria or natural causes, or some say it was poison.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Lisa Marie, ek gee dit vir jou. Ek hoop maar die Wikipedia is reg. Ek gee dit vir jou. He was poisoned or something, or maybe malaria. Okay, let's give it to you. The 6th point, he receives his power, throne and authority from the dragon. So he's not the dragon, he's not a fallen angel, described as one, but he receives power from this dragon. Number 7, the world will wonder after him. The world will marvel after him, follow him. Verse 3 to 4, verse 8 to 18. So you can go and read the whole chapter if you want to. And then there's so many other points. Verse 8 says he will be worshipped. Verse 4, verse 14 to 18, and so on, etc. So I think there's enough to get from just reading the chapter to know that this is a man also described by other cross-references in the Bible. He's the prince to come. He's a willful king. Daniel 11, he is the man of lawlessness. He's the son of destruction. All those things. He is a person. I know there are people that don't believe the Antichrist is a person. There are actually people who don't believe that. They believe he's just a spirit of the time, the Antichrist spirit. But that's getting 1 John chapter 2 confused, because 1 John chapter 2, he actually says, although there are many Antichrist, although we still wait for the Antichrist, there are many Antichrists in this world. So he makes a distinction between the Antichrist and the Antichrists, smaller letter. So go and read it, 1 John chapter 2. So I do believe he's a person. And just a reminder that the Antichrist exists from the beginning of the week. He's not going to come onto the public platform, whatever you call it, in the middle of the week. If we look at our diagram, okay, he's going to be already, he's the rider on the white horse. There's another, he's a man, the rider on the white horse, and he will make peace. And if you compare that with Daniel chapter 9, remember, he will make a covenant with Israel for 7 years. That's the last week, if you can remember the picture. So he makes the covenant, and in the middle of this week, he will break that covenant, and then his reign will be terrible. Then he will be possessed by Satan himself, and so on and so on. So let me just quickly share that screen again so that we can just get a clear picture of that. I'll go back there. Okay, there it is. Okay, let me go back there. Okay, I don't have, I'll do this. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, hopefully that helps. Okay, so if you can remember the last week, that is still outstanding, if I can say it that way, from the prophetic word. It hasn't happened yet, about the prince that will make a covenant with many for 7 years for that 1 week. And then that's Daniel 9, verse 26, 27. In the middle of the week, he will break this covenant with them. And then there will be war, and there will be just terrible reign that's going to take place under him. And this is what we see now in Revelation 13 being described, where the beast will now come to the foreground, not in only directly over Israel, because I think in the first part of the tribulation, it will be mostly directed to Israel, although it will be felt worldwide with everything that we spoke about happening. But here in chapter 13, the whole world, and you'll study this chapter, you'll see his rule will extend to the whole world, and the whole world will worship him, those whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb of God. So hopefully that helps you a little bit there. If I can quickly, verse 1 says, I saw a beast rising from the sea, and we spoke about he's got 10 horns and 7 heads with diadems, with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on the 10 horns, on his horns, and blasphemous names on his heads. I'm not going to go again. Revelation 12:3, you can hear the dragon also had 7 horns, obviously because the Antichrist is going to be the agent of the dragon, of Satan. He's going to be the one who will take that position and place where he will rule in the satanic, if you can call it that, satanic rule kingdom. We will also have more information, and I don't want to jump the gun, but we will have more information when we get to chapter 17 again, about the 7 heads, the 10 horns, and we will read, just for instance, verse 9 in chapter 17 tells us that the 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which a woman sits, and they are 7 kings. Interesting. 7 mountains. Now, who wants to guess? I'm jumping the gun. Who wants to guess where in the world do you have 7 mountains? I hear someone.
Rudy, I think it is Rome.
You're correct. Rome is, I'm giving you tips now. Hopefully let's get there. And so all would have forgotten what I've said now. But the prostitute sitting on Rome, who's that?
A Pope. The Catholic Church.
The Roman Church. So we'll get there. So, okay, yes, it is. Okay, we'll get there. Okay. Ja, nou ek het julle nou heeltemal te veel goed om yeah, anyways, so they are the 7 worldly empires, and Satan rules over them. The dragon gives power and authority to the beast, so he rules now over them. He's in that position. And also chapter 17 verse 12 explains the 10 horns are 10 kings, but they will only be given authority later on, and that's what we'll read further on. And their rule, it's actually very ironic, their rule of the 10 kings will only be for 1 hour. Go and read it. It's very funny. It's only they're going to rule for 1 hour. Okay, Revelation 13 verse 2. Let's go to Revelation 13 verse 2. Let me get that screen up there again. Okay. Verse, ja, laat ek net gou sien. We looked at that. Okay, there we are. Now we're at the right place. But verse 2. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's. Its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave its power and the throne and great authority. Now the beast here is described as being comparable with a leopard and a bear and a lion. That's why I put that picture up there. You saw that lion, leopard, kind of funny mythological Chronicles of Narnia movie guy, something funny stuff on there. You didn't see it, Megan. So she's just making a face like that to me. Anyways, so he will be okay. Does this ring a bell? The leopard, the bear, and the lion. I actually said it many times tonight. The three animals in Daniel 7. The leopard, it's his rule. This ruler, this fourth animal, this ruler will be kind of a combination of the first three. So if you think Babylon was bad, if you think the Medes and Persians were bad, and if you think Alexander the Great, well, Alexander the evil one, was bad, the Antichrist are going to be a combination of all three. Because he saw him like a leopard. And where do you think this imagery comes from? It's Daniel. Talks about the nations, the Gentile kings. Anyway, so his rule will be that combination, and he will be the culmination, if I can use that word, of evil, of all these Gentile nations. Okay? And obviously the Roman Empire. And he's far more dreadful than all these empires. So he doesn't come from the first three, because those three are plugged up. And the fourth one represents the fourth kingdom. That's the Roman Empire. That's a clue. And we'll get to that now. And I know Alan asked about, will the Roman Empire be revived? That's a good question. And I'll ask that question now. Now, also, I wonder if you noticed something when you read this. It says the leopard, the bear, and the lion. Do you notice something? Who's picking up something there? It's just some interesting fact. It's not really very deep, but who's picking up something there? Yeah, but you have to go to Daniel 7 to pick it up. Okay, so
Just give us the answer.
Let me just relieve you from your misery. Okay, the order of the animals. In Daniel 7, verse 6, we have the third animal, the leopard. Daniel 7, verse 5, we have the second animal, the bear. Daniel 7, verse 4, we have the first animal, the lion. So when with eagle wings. So when Daniel looks forward in time, he sees the three animals. He sees the lion, he sees the bear, he sees the leopard. Now, what is happening in chapter 13, Revelation 13, verse 2? It's just the opposite in chronological order. I know it's really not a deep. He just, that's it. That's it. Lizelle says he sees it from the other side. Okay, so Daniel is looking forward and John is looking backwards. I don't know if that's very prominent, profound. Probably not, but it's just interesting. I thought, just wanted to see if anyone picks that up. Okay, so let's look at the next. I called it the mortal wound and the worship of Satan. That's, if you want to have heading on that, the mortal wound and the worship of Satan. Now that is verse 3. So we're going to verse 3 and let's see what is happening. And then I want some discussion also. I want to find out what you guys think. Revelation 13:3. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. Now, who saw that movie? What is it? Escape Mm-mm. The Rapture movie.
Where
Left Behind. And the books and stuff, and read the books. It's a lot of fiction in there. But I don't know if you remember when you saw that. What happens to the Antichrist? Okay. Maria says, doesn't he die? Okay. So who want to tell me what's happening here with the mortal wound and him being healed and then the whole earth marvel at him? Who wants to give a comment or a response there? Okay, Marie says he comes back from the dead.
it gives him authority, so it makes people follow him.
Let's see if anyone is listening. It's quiet. Nobody. Okay, let's do vote. Who believes the Antichrist is going to be killed? A mortal wound is a fatal wound, and he will be made alive again. Who believes that? Put up your hand. There's one. Jose doesn't know. Donovan says, Kathy says, who says, the others are not sure. Peter and Priscilla, tell a thumbs up. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sorry, Rudy, how do you say you don't agree? You say raise your hand if you do. So if the hand's down, it means we don't or don't know. So how do we say we don't agree?
You don't agree? Okay, put your something up. Is there a thumbs down? I don't know. Okay, John, what do you think?
I just don't think he dies, and I'll tell you why I don't. Because if he dies, he cannot come to life again. The reason being, I would go on the thing, if it's appointed to man to die once, only and after that the judgment. There are very few people who are raised from the dead.
Yeah.
And I don't think so. And I don't know if a mortal wound is a fatal wound. It's a mortal wound, but is it a fatal wound?
Is there a difference?
Mine says fatal wound.
Okay, what is it? An NIV? What's it say? The NIV says fatal wound. What's it, Elifatolan? What's it? Okay, I didn't check the other translations.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll explain what I think.
Okay.
Mortal. I thought it meant that the person. Okay, let me just relieve all of you of your misery again. Okay, I don't think the Antichrist is gonna die, and I don't think he is going to get a mortal wound. Okay, let me just show you, when you read the Bible, read the details. Don't just read and assume. Read the details. It says one of its heads seemed, it's an important word, to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast.
To get a false sign and wonder.
Lizelle says it was a false sign and wanted to get everyone make up believe. Okay. Now, okay, let me give you, there are different views. Some believe, yeah, Maria?
That because the beast, the Antichrist, is a false Messiah, he will be the counterfeit of Christ.
Yes.
And will even stage false resurrection.
Okay, so that's one of the views I was going to mention, that some people believe that Antichrist will stage a false resurrection, that it seemed like a mortal wound, and that they play with the word seemed. Okay, that's one probability, but I don't think the Antichrist is getting a mortal wound. Let's read the text. It says one of its heads. How many heads does he have? 7.
Oh, 7, sorry.
Now, what does the heads represent?
What is that?
What does the 7 heads represent?
7 early on.
7 mountains with the 7 kings. So one of the kings. Okay, so let me explain. Let me explain. Some do believe that the Antichrist will be assassinated and that he will be resurrected from the dead, and then because of this miracle, and that's what a lot of the movies kind of show, that it will certainly make the world marvel and walk after him and follow him because they believe he is the Messiah and all because he was resurrected. Okay. But it's and then they also say it's kind of a counterfeit of Christ. It's always a copycat. The devil copycats what Jesus happened to him. Now, it also says one of its heads seemed to have a mortal. So it is not the beast itself that is wounded. It's one of the heads that is wounded. That's the first thing we need to observe. We're just observing the text. And also John says it seemed like a mortal wound, but it was healed. So he didn't die, or whoever it is, okay? Or I'm going to explain what I think this head is. I'm going to tell you why I think it is. Now, the wounding of the one head and the healing of that one head, I believe, is the Roman Empire. Now, remember, Alan asked the question, will the Roman Empire be revived? Because it's seemingly, to all of us, the Roman Empire is dead. But it's not. But it will be revived in this future empire will be revived. They will be considered as a miracle when and as a demonstration of Satan's power when the Roman Empire revived. So that's just my view. I'm not saying it is completely 100% the right one, but that's what I understand. That this wound is given to one of the heads, that's the kings, and obviously the 7 mountains, the 10 kings, talks about the Roman Empire, and I think that's probably, I think, what it means. So I might be wrong. Maybe it's the Antichrist who will be shot and then not really dead and stage it. That can also be true. But for me, the Roman Empire seemed to be dead, but they will be revived again. And that's how I see it. Good? Nobody arguing? No one online.
Not really Revelation.
Let me see. Okay, but really now we're overlapping current times with tribulation times in the vision. Okay. Okay, Cynthia. So Cynthia, I don't know if we discussed this many moons ago when we started with introduction to Revelation, where we also said, although sometimes is even in Daniel, that the prophecy that was spoken had 2 aspects, 2 dimensions, if you want to say it that way. The first one, it was descriptive of that time, but it was also prophetic of future. So even if I can give you well, that's Daniel. So we can say in history some things happened that fulfilled Daniel in some of those prophecies, but it was kind of a type of a prophecy for the future. Okay, so yes, it can be that someone refers to the kings of Babylon and of Alexander the Great, but now we see in Revelation 13 that the Antichrist combines all of that. It's a prophecy of him also. So it's both descriptive and prophetic in that sense. So that's how we always read. Something happening now can also be kind of a picture of something that's prophecy also. It can also be that. So I don't know if that is what you were asking, where tribulation times in the vision. Am I understanding the question correctly? Current times, tribulation times.
Already.
Yes.
So I think maybe I'm just getting a bit confused because
most of the time while we've been working through Revelation, we've said that this is describing the tribulation after
The church is
the rapture.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we've said, and Revelation, the vision is coming about in exactly the sequence that it's going to happen.
In a chronological order, as in speaking to you.
Yeah, but now we're saying, but part of the vision, all of a sudden, part of the vision is actually part of what could have happened already.
No.
It happened before the rapture. So it's just confusing me.
No, this is not what's happening before the rapture. This is what's happening in the middle of the tribulation.
Yes.
The Antichrist that will arise from the nations, and and there's a mortal wound to one of the heads. That means that obviously, seemingly to us and to the future, it seems like the Roman Empire died 300 years after Christ, 400 years after Christ. But now, suddenly in the tribulation, it's revived again. Obviously, geographically, we'll have to go and look about who the nations and the locations and those things are, and how it is presented in Revelation as a revived empire. I think it has to do with the ruling nations in different areas, but I haven't gone into all of those details. But I do believe the 10 kingdoms that was represented by the 10 toes of the Roman Empire, even in history, those 10 toes that are seemingly not anymore in any ruling capacity or position, they have not died. And that the Roman Empire kind of is lingering somewhere. I don't know how. Slumbering. Maybe it's the Illumination, maybe Illuminati. Maybe it's the secret societies. Maybe it's all, I don't know. We can just make up a lot of conspiracies if we want to. But somehow they will be revived, and that they are not completely dead forever. So that's the idea. I don't know if that answers you, but what we're reading here in Revelation 13 has nothing to do with the church. Nothing to do with the church and before the rapture. It has nothing to do with that.
We are going to heaven.
Okay, no, I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking that we're saying then that the mortal wound that he's seeing here was actually inflicted 300 years after Christ.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But as I said, this is just my understanding of opinion. I might be wrong. It might be the Antichrist who, I don't know, might be. But this is why Revelation and prophetic literature is not that easy.
Yeah.
So maybe maybe I'm wrong, but for me, I know that I understand that the Roman Empire that existed then, that are seemingly dead, is going to be revived, and that's why I'm making that connection. Maybe it's not right for me to make that connection. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Okay, now I'm not questioning what you're saying, because I agree with you that it could be the resurrection of the Roman Empire during that time. I was just confused with the
but we can also
rule that we've applied.
Yeah, if I want to try and make a point, and I haven't tried to really dig too deep in this, but if I want to try and make my point and say this is the Roman Empire that's being revived, that has had a mortal wound, I can actually argue from the text. If you read verse 3, it says one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound. It seemed to them then, in the tribulation, it seemed to have a mortal wound. Now, we don't know when the mortal wound was given to him.
I agree.
It doesn't say this dragon, the head received the mortal wound here in verse 3. It says to us, or to John, when he saw this 7 heads, it's one of the heads seemed to have a mortal wound. So it could have happened 300 after Christ. So it doesn't necessarily mean it happened here. So I don't know if that answers you.
I see what you're saying. That would make sense.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying I didn't go into this in too much detail, but I think if you look at textual evidence here in the text itself, it doesn't say that he receives the mortal wound here. So let me hear the lows. The verse does not say when the wound was. Okay, thank you. They're actually saying what I've said. Now, John, I saw your hand going up, so please, I don't know if you want to say something.
I was going to say exactly what you said. So, yeah, that we don't know when it happened.
We are in the spirit on the Lord's Day.
This is scary. We agree.
Well, we agree 90% on all the things.
I'm right.
Urs, I see Urs is still unmuted. Do you have something to add?
Yes, I wanted to say that what about the Roman Empire actually continuing after 300 in the Roman Church? Because these people have taken the names of the emperors and everything into their own thing.
Yeah, it can be. It can be that it's not a country as such today like America or Europe or Australia or South Africa where there's a government. It's not in that sense, but it can be that it's part of the Roman Church kind of still surviving until this time comes where the beast is given the beast is given that power and authority and rule, and obviously so it can be. I don't know.
If you look afterwards, they were ruling the whole of Europe.
Well,
the church was ruling in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, that's a good observation. No,
and that stopped at some stage.
Yeah,
that could be the mortal wound.
Yeah,
maybe.
But I think when we get to chapter 17, if I look at the text there, I would rather say that the church, the Roman church, is the prostitute that sits on the mountains of the seven heads. So yes, I'm not completely agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just saying yes, it can be. Can be. What you're saying makes sense. So good. So yeah, nice. Thanks for that.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, Maria's got a question. I'll just repeat for everyone.
No, I just need clarification.
Yeah.
So the beast in chapter 11 is Satan.
From the bottomless pit, yes, the dragon, yeah.
And then the beast in chapter 13 is the Antichrist.
Yeah. And then verse 18, the beast from the earth is the false prophet. So there are three beasts.
Now what's the false prophet?
We'll get there.
And then the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Is this now a whole scenario? This is not specific.
The dragon is Satan. The red dragon is Satan himself.
Satan?
Yeah, it's been pictured as a dragon.
Okay, and then you were saying that you believe the Antichrist is a Jew.
Yeah, a person. Yeah, a Syrian Jew from Syria.
But the Jew will have its power from the
But
dragon.
he will get his power from the dragon. He will be Satan possessed.
And what were you saying?
So let me just say that some people and some of the commentaries I read says that the Antichrist will be the incarnation of Satan. I don't agree with that, because only God can be God in the flesh, be incarnated. I don't think the devil has the power to incarnate into a human being, and doesn't say how. In any case, is he born from a babe, from a woman, or whatever? He only gives his power to this person who's already alive. So I don't think that's a bit far-fetched, because they want to see, the commentators that I read kind of wants to say that just as Christ died and was raised, so the Antichrist is the opposite of, not the substitute, the counterfeit. And also, if Jesus is the incarnation, the Antichrist is the incarnation of the devil. I think that's taking it too far. The text is not saying it. The text is not saying it at all. I know we can, from Thessalonians, from Daniel, and from all the studies we've done, come to the conclusion that the Antichrist is a person, is a political figure. And as I say, I'm adding a Jew from Syria, as I studied, but we know he's a person, and that he will be Satan possessed, because he's given power, he's given authority and all those things, and he will operate in the power of Satan.
And you were saying something about the 666?
No, we just read it, but we'll get there. The mark of the
That's
beast.
all coming.
Yeah, we'll look at the mark of the beast. Good. So let's continue. So verse 4. Verse 4 then. Let me see if I can just put it on the screen again. Okay, verse 4 should be there now. Verse 4 says then, and they, this is now, if you go back to those who marvel, the whole earth marvel at him and they follow him. And then verse 4, they worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. Okay? And they worship. Now, if let me just make another point. If you look at Jesus, when he was God incarnate, he wasn't God in heaven and Jesus, God, the Son of God, wasn't in heaven and on earth at the same time. The Son of God. I'm talking about the third person, or the second person in the Trinity. When he came to earth, he was God in human flesh on earth. So in this instance, if you say that the Antichrist is the incarnation, how can the dragon then, you can argue probably that the dragon is like God the Father and he gives power to, but that's just taking it too far. I think that's reading a lot into the text. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. So it says they worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? Okay? Sounds almost like, who's like our God? No weapon formed against you can prosper. God is with us. And now it's just completely flipped on his head. It's not Jesus being worshipped, it's the devil being worshipped. And that is where the world will go to. That's where religions of the world are moving towards. I was thinking of maybe doing one Bible study somewhere now in this about the apostate church, the church of the Antichrist. Because the church, not the church that is raptured, but the church that is apostate, that it will kind of think they are now worshiping Jesus, but they actually, and Paul says in the last days they will even have doctrines of demons. And he's talking about the church, warning the church. So there's a warning also here, and there's also, I'll see if I can put something together about the apostate church. But the fact is the world will worship the beast, okay? And also think about this. Jesus will come set up his millennial kingdom. Here, the devil comes and set up his false kingdom. And people think, it's Jesus in his kingdom, and they follow him and they worship him. Okay, so that is where we the church, but the people that are on earth will need the discernment of the Holy Spirit. They will need to be saved so that they will not be deceived. And the final form of apostasy is just not simply worshipping a pagan god or a false god or whatever the case may be. The final form of apostasy will be the worship of Satan himself. And it says the whole earth marveled. Now we know the whole earth refers here to the non-believers, not those who are saved. And we read this from verse 8 or 7. I'll go back. We'll get there now. It's only those whose names are not written in the book of life that will have the mark of the beast and follow him. So we'll look at that now later on. Now, the beast, the Antichrist, someone who's anti-Christ, against Christ, in the place of the false Messiah, and the world, he will deceive the world. And I haven't actually had the scripture on in 2 Thessalonians. He will do that with signs and wonders, false signs and wonders. False signs and wonders. So we must be careful, because in the church, even today, we see people running after signs and wonders, but they've not been born again. They're running after the wrong stuff, and it's just preparing the world and the apostate church. So Revelation 13:5 then says, verse 5 then says, and the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. How long is that? James Murray?
36 is 3 years.
3.5 years. 3.5 years.
Thessalonians.
Okay, Thessalonians, hopefully this NIV is not. Let me read from the NIV. 2 Thessalonians 3.
2 verse 3.
2 verse 3. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 3. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for the day will not come, talking about judgment, until the rebellion occurs. Obviously, must happen before the day the judgment come, and the man of lawlessness is revealed. Who is that? The Antichrist, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself. Daniel 11, Daniel 7, all those things we talked about. Oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Don't you remember that when I was with you and I used to tell you about these things, and now you know that what is holding him back? And we spoke about this, so that he may be revealed. For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who holds it back will continue to do so until he's taken out of the way. Obviously, I do believe it's the church and the believers that must be taken away before he can be revealed. And then chapter 6, the man on the rider on the white horse comes, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with the breath of his mouth. That's the end of the 7 year, and destroy by the splendor of his coming. The coming of the lawless, listen to what he says, the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan. Okay, so whose work is the Antichrist doing? The work of Satan. Displayed, how is it displayed, the work of Satan? In all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders. You can just imagine.
What verse is that?
2 Thessalonians 2 verse
That verse is verse
10,
9.
9 and 10.
Yeah. And Jesus said, also Matthew 24. He says, false Christs, that's why I'm saying I want to do maybe a Bible study on, specifically on the apostate church, because there are people today that they run after signs and wonders. They don't run after Christ. They run after signs and wonders. And there's actually a movement. Go and see. Go Google it. The Signs and Wonders movement. There's actually a movement. The Signs and Wonders movement. Go and see that. Matthew chapter 24, verse 11. False prophets will arise, lead many astray, and because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Where's thy verse now? Okay, verse 5, 24 verse 5, Matthew 24 verse 5. For many will come in my name saying, I am Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of war. Okay, no, there's another scripture I was looking for.
Look, here is the prize.
Okay, let me not waste time.
Prophets will appear and form great.
24 verse 24. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders. Now, I do believe they're false signs and wonders, not true signs and wonders. In other words, it's deception. Okay, they deceive people. They make people think and believe it's a true miracle, but it's not. So we should be careful about that. Okay, let's continue. I want to finish with this. Verse 5, and the beast was given mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, that's 3.5 years. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that he is to those who dwell in heaven. Also, basically blaspheming everyone, or all of us. Now, his evil character is also described in Daniel 7. Daniel 7 verse 8, Daniel 7 verse 11, Daniel 7 verse 25. Go and read it. And also note, and I see the words, it says he was allowed. He was allowed. Okay? You see, God allows him. to exercise this authority.
Not in the NIV.
It just talks about God's sovereignty also. And when the rapture takes place, before this, and the Antichrist comes on the scene with the white horse and makes peace, this peace will not last. There will be war after that. It will be primarily with Israel, but you're in the middle of tribulation. All hell breaks loose, I believe, on earth, and his covenant, he breaks it, and his rule will be extended to all the world. And then in Daniel 11, if you go back to there, verse 36, it is described as being in total disregard of any God, and he will magnify himself above all. What was well, this is the beast. He just takes on his father's role. What did Satan do in heaven? He wanted to be above God. He wanted to be God, and he was thrown down. So what does the devil do? Same thing. What does false teaching, false theology do? It exalts man. It brings down God. Always. If you see that, it's false teaching. Man is exalted, and God is kind of brought down. So that's the kind of thing you can pick up with false teaching. So I want to finish with verse 7, and I'll put verse 8 also out there for thought, and we can start there next week, obviously, because that verse is being so abused and so wrongly interpreted, and we'll go into that. So let me go back to my picture there. So we spoke about the mortal wound and the worship of Satan, and then also the universal worship and dominion of the beast. So there's universal worship all over the world, and also dominion of the beast. And that's what we find in the next verse. In verse 7, also it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. To conquer them. Okay? These, I believe, are the Gentile Jew believers then that are alive, that have not been part of all the other things. They are alive there, and they will be conquered, and they will become martyrs. They will probably be killed for their faith, and they will be those souls under the altar. Remember the souls under the altar until the end, all those souls under the altar. So I think, that's what I think it refers to. If you go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 23, you'll read the following. Okay, I don't have it here. Okay, I thought I have it. Daniel chapter 7, 23, it says, "Thus he said, as for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom, and on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces." Now you have to decide. You can believe that it already happened, it's historical, or you can believe this is a prophecy for the end times. And I believe this is what it means. His rule will extend to the whole world. Although it starts with Israel, it will extend to the whole world. He will conquer the whole world, and this will be the counterfeit of the millennial kingdom of Christ. And verse 7 also said, God allows this, but it will be ended. Jesus will end it with the breath of his mouth, the word. And it also says the Antichrist will make war against the saints. I said that, the martyrs. And yes, there will also be the others that will be preserved in spite of what the beasts do. There's also those who flee to the mountains and God preserves them, and those things. So I'm going to end there. I just want to put this out, verse 8. Maybe before I do that, is there any questions, any comments, anything that you want to ask from this? Okay, then we spoke about those chats. Any question? Comments? Good. Hopefully that means you understand and are not confused. Hopefully that's not confusion, but understanding that I'm seeing. Okay, yeah. So verse 8 is just going to... You have got a question?
Yes.
Okay, Maria's got a question.
You said the beast is the Antichrist in this chapter.
Yeah.
And the dragon is Satan.
Yeah.
So now, how come the dragon is then the one who they will worship? Will they know there's a dragon?
They would say they will worship. There's people today that worship Satan.
Worship Satan. That's
There are
what it
people
does.
today who worship Satan.
But they'll think they worship.
They think they're worshiping Lucifer. They've changed the whole role, and they think
Yeah, a lot.
people worship today Satan. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean they're
yeah.
literally going to see Satan.
But it's going to be worse more.
So they won't be like worshipping the Antichrist.
Okay. Let me
That's what I wanna-
let me just say that. Also, we talk about the Trinity of God is God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But we also talk about the Satanic Trinity. That is the dragon, that's Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. Okay, we will read about the false prophet because the false prophet will make the people worship. Okay, because he's like the religious leader. Now, if you want to see it that way, the Antichrist will be the political leader, but the false prophet will be the religious leader. Now, I've spoken to many people. Some people say, oh, the Antichrist, it's the Pope. You know, everyone says, all the popes was not, all the popes, they were Antichrist, okay? Maybe in Antichrist spirit, I don't know. But the fact is, it's not the Antichrist. The Pope is not the Antichrist. He might be the false prophet because he takes the role of that spiritual leader in the world. So that's my take on it. I'm not saying I know. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's someone else. I don't know. But I think it's going to be this religious leader in the world that will be respected, and he will make the world worship and things like
It's
that.
already changing.
Yeah, no. That's why eyes are always on these guys and watching them and seeing what they do. So if there's no question, no comments, are we all good? Everyone tired? They want to go to bed? Okay, so I'm going to end. Let's read verse 8, and maybe next week prepare if you can, and we'll talk about verse 8. I'll put it on the screen. Verse 8, because this is a completely different topic, but people use this, and that just to show you that people really use the Bible just to prove their view when it's wrong. Okay, so Revelation 13 verse 8 reads the following, and I've got the ESV on there on the top, and I've got the King James Version at the bottom to show you even the translations are different because of the translator's interpretation of the text. Okay. So the ESV says, and all who dwell on earth will worship it, the beast, everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Okay, so according to that, that means God predetermines and chooses whose name will be in the book. Before the foundation of the world, he wrote your name in the book. And if your name is not there, you're not chosen, you're not predestined, and only those God chooses who goes to heaven and who doesn't. Okay, that's basically the Calvinistic view, and they use the scripture to prove it. Now, just to show you the confusion, go to the King James in the bottom. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Can you see the difference? Now, the King James has put the emphasis on that the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. The ESV has put the emphasis on the names written before the foundation of the world.
Sure.
That's very scary to think in the translation we have this difference because of the translators. Now, we know that the ESV, I like to read the ESV because the English is easier for me than to read the King James. But if I have to, I'll go back to the King James just to refer back to see what the King James says, because it's a different translator and it's not a reform. So the ESV do have, on their panel of translators, they do have a lot of reformers there and Calvinists. And the NIV is Jan Reg. Okay, I just want to see John. John, you have a comment there?
Yeah, I've got the Amplified, and the Amplified has a very nice usage of the word. They say, everyone whose name has not been written since the foundation of the world. So in other words, not before the foundation, but from the beginning of time to present is what they say. In other words, you are born again and then your name is written in the book of life. So that makes sense to me.
Okay.
It's not before, it's since.
I'm going to be devil advocate, but come back next week and we'll talk about it. So we've got some homework. The question I'm asking is, what does it mean when the Bible says your name can be blotted out of the book? If your name was written in, how can it be blotted out? There are scriptures that prove that, but I'm not going to go into that now. Now, I believe in eternal security. I believe if you are saved, you're saved forever. God doesn't save you halfway. I do believe in that. But the fact is, how can your name then be blotted out if there is scripture that says that? But we're going to go and look up, see if you can find scriptures. You've got some homework to do, and see if you can find out what Revelation 13 verse 8 mean about the names being written in the book of life or being blotted out. Go and look at that up. And also the other thing I want to ask is, go and look also at the point, if you accept, let's say we've got two views, two translations, two views. The first one believes that your name is written before the foundation of the world into the book. Obviously, depends on the translation. The King James is the other view, says your name is written in the book of life, okay? But the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. Okay. Now the question, or from the foundation of the world. Listen to the wording, not before the foundation of the world. The Lamb was slain from the foundation of the world. Now the question, there are translations that says the Lamb was slain before the foundation. That's interpretations. Before even creation, the Lamb was slain. That's another view. So my question is, go look at that, and we'll talk about that next week and see if we can get some answers about that. Was the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world, or was your name written in the book of life before you were even born? So that basically, and I'm gonna. That's two options from the translation. Then I'm gonna come with a third one, and I'm gonna say what I think. And I think John has a good point. And that's a clue for everyone else to look at, because that will bring you closer to the answer what John said. Okay, I'm finishing here. I'm not going to continue